Today's training, we have John Duncan joining us. He's the program manager for SPRS. He's going to be giving you all a walkthrough of how to submit your SPRS score for the NIST SP 171 self-assessment. And then also he's going to show you how to submit for the CMMC level 1. That's self-attestation. And then the level 2 and show you the distinction. Those are all separate scores, separate essentially instructions for each one. Without any further ado, I'll hand it over to John. Welcome, John.
Hey, good afternoon, and good afternoon, everybody. I will set up my screen here and just go ahead and let me know when you see it.
I can see it.
Okay, that's great. All right, good afternoon. As he said, my name is John Duncan. I'm the program manager for the Supplier Performance Risk System. We are located at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine. Believe it or not, in our little program office, not only do we have SPRS, but we also have the PMO for CPARS. They're right across the hall from us. And we're also the PMO for the Navy's product quality system called PEDREP, the Product Data Reporting and Evaluation Program, where PQDRs and others such go in. It's more about supply systems. Today I'm going to discuss cybersecurity assessments in SPRS. We're going to talk about how to get your SPRS scores in there and maybe help avoid some costly mistakes. I'll tell you a couple things I will tell you and tell you things I won't tell you. So I work for the Navy, but SPRS is an OSD program. It's run by the DoD. The Navy is what we call the executive agent. They just pay us to do it, to run it for the DoD. I will tell you how to operate the system. I'll tell you what the process is to get your assessments into SPRS and to view them once they are in SPRS. What I will not tell you is how to run the checklist. I'm not an IT person. I'm also not a policy person, so I can't tell you exactly how your contracting officers are going to use it, but I will tell you how to operate the system and what other people are expecting as far as compliance, at least from what I've seen. If you have some questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. If you want to jump in the middle and ask a question, please do. Kind of keeping it a little interactive makes it kind of nice. I apologize now for two things. One is I'm from the Northeast, so I talk really fast, which makes the slides go quick, but I also might miss something in chat. So Derek's going to help me wave people down. So what are we going to do? So this is what we do. We'll go through our slides here. Today, we're talking about what is SPRS, how to get your assessments, how to enter the assessments, talk about some hierarchies and some pointers. These are the things that can help or hurt you, and I'm going to give you some pointers to navigate some of the more complicated parts, which aren't complicated, but they sure feel that way. And then I'll have some resources and points of contact. So what actually is SPRS? It's, as I said, the Supplier Performance Risk System. It is the authoritative source for retrieving supplier and product information. It is a system largely based for contracting officers and acquisition. Because contracting officers from the DoD all have to come to SPRS, that's one of the reasons why you see NIST and CMMC in SPRS. It's a one-stop shop for contracting officers, or KOs as they're called, checking compliance before they award a contract. So you'll see all the things we do. If you are a vendor out there, you already know this, that we are already rating you on supplier risk. We're grading you on 10 different factors. We're also rating your quality and delivery and a whole bunch of other stuff. These are all the things that SPRS does. Okay, this is what we're here for, so I'm not going to bore you with all that stuff. So we're going to talk about NIST today, and we're going to talk about CMMC. So I'm going to start out with NIST, and I'm going to move on to CMMC. CMMC is not being used by the federal government, by the DoD just yet, because CFR 48 is not out yet, so they don't have the instructions and guidance as to how to use the CMMC assessments, but they certainly are evaluating and using the NIST assessments. So how do you get a self-assessment into SPRS? So if you are not doing business with the DoD right now, or even doing business with the federal government, and obviously I'm talking to the vendors here, there's two things that you can do in parallel. The first thing you have to do is, if you're going to be handling CUI, you're going to have to create a system security plan. So your IT people are going to do this. They're going to create a system security plan for your IT system. And after you've created that, then you are going to download this checklist. It's called the DPCAP methodology, and there's the big long link, and if you cut and paste that in there, it's going to download a PDF, and it's basically a checklist with 110 steps, and you're going to answer a bunch of questions, and you're going to look at that piece of paper, you're going to come up with, answer all those questions, and you're going to get a number at the very end of that. So you could do this separately. If you've never done business with the DoD or with the federal government, this is what you have to do first. First of all, you have to create an account in DoD's or excuse me, the federal government's System for Award Management, or SAM. This is run by the General Services Administration. You're going to set up a user account. You're going to set up your entities, right? If you're a mom and pop, you only have one company, this is going to be released. You're going to set up your one entity, but maybe you have multiple entities, multiple locations. So you're going to have multiple entities. As you do that registration process, they are going to give you a unique entity identifier, or a UEI. That's going to be a 10 to 13 digit code, and it's going to tell you, it's going to be unique to you, and that's how you're going to use that to identify yourself when you're doing business with the federal government. You're going to have an electronic business POC, point of contact. This is the person who's going to go in and make sure your SAM account is always up to date, right? You change your phone numbers, you change your address, you change ownership. That kind of information needs to be updated in SAM, something called, you will learn very quickly about the Federal Acquisition Regulation. One of the things it says is that you have to maintain your records in SAM, they have to be up to date. So your EBPOC is the person you point, usually has the account to go into SAM and to do this. Now, since you want to do business with the DoD, don't worry, it was hard enough to get into business with the federal government. Now we're going to make it just that much harder because we can't help ourselves. So you're going to have to get this other code in addition to this. If you want to do business with the DoD, you need a CAGE code. You need you need a commercial and government entity code. And that is assigned by the Defense Logistics Agency. It's all part of your SAM process, as a matter of fact, so it's not a lot of work for you. They will give you a 5-digit alphanumeric code for each of those locations to line up with each of those UEIs. So the UEIs, you can go off and do business with the federal government, and outside the DoD and inside the DoD, you're going to have CAGE codes, or CAGEs, as we call. And to get that, you're going to have to give the DoD folks at CAGE, at that site, some additional information. So they're going to come back to you and say, okay, you're doing business with the federal government, fine. If you want to do business with the DoD, you're going to have additional information that we need to vet before we issue you a CAGE. As time goes on, you're going to get this information, then you're going to go into SAM to make sure that your CAGE hierarchy is correct. So after you've been issued CAGEs for, say, maybe you have 2 or 3 locations in your company, so you're going to have 2 or 3 different CAGEs, you need to establish your CAGE hierarchy. That means that what's the headquarters CAGE, what's the parent CAGE, and what are the children CAGEs below that. This is incredibly important. And for the people who are C3PAOs who are actually doing the vendor assessments, it may not seem like it's that important to your customer, but it is. So I'm going to give you some pointers too to help them through this process. So then you're going to go, now you want to come to be able to go into SPRS. Now I have a CAGE. I want to come to SPRS and I want to be able to enter my NIST assessments or my CMMC self-assessments. So you need to go to PIEE, and you're going to, and it's at PIEE.mil there. I'm going to give you the link for that. And you're going to get into the system that allows you to access not only SPRS, but the wide area workflow, which is how you get paid, and a couple other systems as well. You're going to assign in your company somebody who's going to manage your accounts in PIEE. So you're going to have a contractor administrator, or a CAM. So you have numerous people that are going to be able to go in here and check your supplier risk scores for your company, to enter NIST assessments and CMMC self-assessments. So the CAM is going to be the person that's going to approve those accounts and let people get into your SPRS to see your SPRS data. You're going to establish those user accounts for the individuals, and really, really important, if you are going to have people entering your NIST assessment results or CMMC self-assessments, they need a SPRS cyber vendor role. We'll talk about that. There's 2 roles you can have. One is just so you can look at the scores, but the SPRS cyber vendor role is where you can add and edit them. And we separate that because there's a lot of companies that say, sure, you can see it, people can go in and see the scores, but I only want 1 or 2 people actually going in and changing things. So that's why it's separate. And then once you get to that point, you can enter your assessment results. So that's the hard part, and that's the long way of how it goes. It's not terribly bad, but that's why I say it's separate. It's parallel courses here. You can work on your IT side, get your system security plan, and start the checklist, and then do all the other things to get into business. If you have already done business with the DoD and you are already have an account in WAF, the wide area workflow, which is the vouchering system by which you get paid, that means you're already in PIEE, so you could just skip to all these things, and you could just go get that SPRS cyber vendor role. It's very simple. You're going to apply for that. Your contractor administrator is going to approve it, and now you can enter your assessment results. So we're going to start out with the easy one, the one that's online right now, the one that contracting officers are checking right now, is the NIST SP 800-171 assessments. So you're going to click on it, on the link on the menu, and I'm going to show you one of those coming up. I just kept it down to trying to neaten up these slides here so it's a little more clear. But once you click on cyber reports, you're going to come to this screen. It's going to give you a chance to put in, to select which cage you were talking about. Remember that cage? You'll see ZSP01 is common here. This is a test cage, so there's no real company there, but your cage would look similar to this. And then you'll come to the window where you can add new assessments. You'll see in the lower right-hand corner, there's a bunch of tabs, the company hierarchy. That tells you where that parent cage and child cage relationship is. It shows it in a graphical manner, so it's very clear. It gives you an overview of the system. It's got tabs, it's got CMMC and NIST, and then it's got some guidance if you need some help as well. So now, since we're starting with NIST, we're going to see we've clicked on NIST, and we're going to have basic assessment. So we're going to enter a basic assessment because you're entering it. Now you're here, and in the middle of the screen, you're going to see that there's an Add New NIST Assessment button. If you don't see that button, that means you don't have the SPRS cyber vendor role. It means you have the role that you can just look at things, but you can't edit. So that means you need to go back to PIEE, request your SPRS cyber vendor role, and then you're going to get your CAM to approve it. Don't worry, I'm going to show you this a couple more times so once you're ready to do that, now you've run your checklist that we talked about before. Now you're about to enter an assessment. So you're going to enter this information. And it's fairly straightforward for NIST. So you're going to enter the assessment date. That's the date you conducted the assessment. You're going to enter an assessment score. That's between -243 and 110. 110 is the max. It won't let you put 120. Some people want to put big numbers in there. It's got to be 110. And that's the result of that checklist that you ran that you downloaded from the OST site. You can enter the assessing scope. Is going to be enterprise for your entire company. It's going to be an enclave just for part of your company, or for a contract if it's dependent on whatever contract you're working on. You'll see the plan of action completion date is next. This is really important. So if you ran your checklist and you got a 110, you're good. You could just finish filling all this out and you're done. If you don't have a 110, that means you have some areas that you still need to work on your checklist. So the plan of action completion date says, I'm going to be 110 on this date in the future, a couple months ago from now, 2 or 3, whatever. You're going to say, to tell the government, on this date, I'm going to be up to 110. Down below that, you'll see the SSP assess. That's the name of the document, whatever your system security plan you call it. Down below, you'll see revision and a date that you put on there. Additional information, because remember, this is noting your assessment of your system security plan. And then finally, because you're doing all this because you want to get a contract, and you need to have cages that are covered by this so that the contracting officer can go in and award to one of these companies, you're going to open your cage hierarchy and click on that button that says open cage hierarchy, and you'll see that window that's on the right. And that's going to show you basically your hierarchy. And this is where you can select the cages that are using the IT system that is subject to the SSP. So the system security plan for that IT system, you pick which cages are on that IT system. If for some reason you look on here and you know you have 8 cages and you're only seeing 5, that's because, remember I said your hierarchy information has to be correct in SAM. It's very simple, but if it's wrong, it'll be a problem. If you don't have the hierarchy information correct, you won't be able to see all your cages. But don't worry, I'm going to show you how to fix that when the time comes. And that's why I've got that red bumper sticker down there. If it's wrong, you won't be able to see it. So you want to make sure that's correct. And by the way, once you make it correct, unless you start moving cages around, it's not something you have to revisit. Once it's good, you're good. Just got to make sure it's good once. So anyway, you're going to select those cages. You're going to say okay, and you're going to save it, and then you're done. And at that point, as soon as you hit save on that, your basic assessment is saved, and your KO can go in and look and verify that the particular cage that you're trying to let a contract to has got an assessment in it. That's how it works for us for NIST SP 800-171 assessments. I'll kind of break right now. Does anybody have any questions about NIST?
Okay. John, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat yet, but can you talk more to, you mentioned, I think you said it was like a checklist, or when you're going through doing the self-assessment, what's that tool that's used, or how is it?
I'm going to go back to that. Yes, it's going to be a met not met kind of checklist, and that comes from OSD, and that's the location that you're going to download the checklist from. And at the end of that, you're going to tally up a score, and that's the number that's going to be up to 110.
Okay. And got it. And there's no, for the NIST assessment, there's no like evidence requirements or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. People run their checklist, they come in and enter the results here.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean your contracting officer is going to inquire further as to it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's NIST. That's the system that's online right now. It's been online for about 5 years now, and it was pretty much the JV system. That was the first one to come online while the DoD worked out how they wanted to implement CMMC, the cybersecurity model, maturity model certifications. So that's online right now, and that's what we're going to go through next. So how to do level 1 and level 2 self-assessments, because maybe you haven't gotten a C3 PAO online yet, but you want to do your level 1, level 2 self-assessments. This is how you do. So now you can see what the screen looks like here. You go to Cyber Reports for CMMC and NIST. You're going to click on that. And then again, you're going to click on the cages and you're going to run Cyber Reports. And that's going to bring you back to the menu that we saw here. It's a screen. Instead of having NIST highlighted this time, you're going to click on CMMC, and that's going to bring up the sub-tabs for CMMC. So you'll see you got level 1s, level 2s. You'll have the level 2 C3 PAOs. So if you got a C3 PAO, do an assessment for you can see the results right here, and you'll affirm them, and we'll talk about how that works. And then if you had DibCap come in and do one of the level 3 highs, then you'll be able to see those as well, because you have to affirm them. But if you're ready to do your level 1 assessment, self-assessment here, you can click on that and you can see the add new CMMC level 1 self-assessment button. You're going to click on it and now it'll bring you to the screen to do that. Again, with the red bumper sticker, if you don't see that button, it's because you don't have the SPRS cyber vendor role. It means that you have view only role, but you don't have the edit role. So that's what you need to go back to your CAM and tell your CAM that you need this role. So you're going to add a new self-assessment. And for level 1, it's fairly straightforward. So you're going to do the assessment date. This is the date, just like in this, the date you did the actual assessment of the SSP. For assessing scope, you'll see that the tool is a lot more modern here. You're just going to click on a drop down. It's only got 2 for CMMC, either enterprise or enclave. They're going to ask you for how many employees you have in your company. You're going to enter that in, or you can scroll up with the up and down arrows. You're going to need to see if you're going to report that you are in compliance with FAR Regulation 52204. So you can click on that link there and it'll bring up exactly what the requirement is. And it'll tell you if you're in compliance with this just for level 1. You say yes or no. And then just for like NIST, now you're going to say, these are the cages that I did that are subject to this. So you're going to click on open cage hierarchy. It's going to bring up that same window you saw before, and you're going to select the cages that are subject to, that are using the system that you have the SSP for. Once again, if your hierarchy is wrong, you won't be able to see all your cages. If you don't see all your cages, you got to fix that in SAM, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So once you've entered this, now you've entered this, and level 1 is fairly straightforward. You can see there's only 5 things you have to enter here. Now you're going to go on to affirmations. That's the difference between NIST and CMMC. NIST, you entered it, you were good for 3 years. And that's why it's the JV system. With CMMC, there's a little more scrutiny. It just requires a little more effort from the company. You have to do an annual affirmation and an additional affirmation. So we're going to go to affirmations. So you can click on continued affirmation. It's going to bring up this window. As you enter these, if you're the affirming official, if you're the person that actually does the affirmation, you can click on continued affirmation. You can do the affirmation right now. Usually, most people, like for small companies, this is the case. For larger companies, you probably have an IT person that's going to be filling out the first part because they understand the questions. And then you're going to have an officer that you have to send an email to say, okay, I've done this. Go into SPRS now and do the affirmation. So what you're going to do is enter the email address of the affirming official and you're going to send it to them. You're going to say transfer to the AO. They're going to get an email saying that they have to go do this. When they come to SPRS, they're going to be told exactly what to go do. We have a bunch of training and we'll talk about that as well. So let's assume that the affirming official is somebody different. They're going to go and they're going to go. They've got the email. They've logged into SPRS, and your AO has to have a SPRS account, and your AO has to have the cyber vendor role. If you have a larger company, your AO, your affirming official, probably will never come to SPRS except to do this. So we're going to make it very clear how to do this. We have a lot of training, but they still will need an account. Obviously, it's free, and it's up to your account, up to your CAM, your contractor administrator, who gets that role. So the AO is going to open it. They're going to come to CMMC. They were told to come to level 1. They've come to level 1, and they will see that one of the assessments is pending affirmation. That's the one we want to do. They want to affirm it. We're going to go to edit. You're going to click on the button with the pencil on it, and we'll bring you up to the affirmation page. So it's going to give some information about the affirming official. And this is what you would have seen if you were the affirming official when you entered it. It would just bring you to this screen. It has a definition of what the affirming official is. It's really important that the person who is going to affirm this is this kind of person. They might read this and go, this isn't me. This is my boss. He's the one that needs to go do it. Or they may say, that's his boss. She needs to come do it. It's going to be one of those folks, but it's going to be some officer generally in the company who is authorized to do this. All this is subject to the False Claims Act. So you'll see more screens that pop up to say, hey, this is illegal. You are making a legal statement here to the federal government. Make sure you are the accurate person. The affirming official information comes right off their PIEE account. When you log in, we capture that. And then there's an additional place to put additional email addresses on. This doesn't mean this is not emails that have to be sent out. No one else is going to be contacted. This is just an opportunity for you if you want to say, these are some other people in my company who can talk about this assessment, and you want to tell the government that. Not required, it's just optional. So now you're going to continue to affirmations after you know that you're the person that's going to do the affirmation. And now we're going to show you the actual affirmation. On this screen, we're going to show you everything you're affirming because you're going to make an official statement here, and we want you to understand, go into it with your eyes open. So it's going to tell you that this one is an unaffirmed. The status right now is a final level 1 self-assessment. It's going to have something called a CMMC unique identifier, or UID. And the UID is kind of important because that's what identifies this particular assessment. You'll see the AO's information here. It talks to you about the assessing scope, the date of the assessment, and then these are the cages that were selected that are using the IT system that was assessed. And then below that, there's a disclaimer statement that basically says that you are making a legal statement. You are making it that is subject to prosecution under Section 101 of Title 18, false official statements. There's a False Claims Act. All they're saying is you're saying that this is really true. So you're going to click on that box and you're going to affirm it. And once you've done that, now your assessment is affirmed. You'll see down at the bottom, you have a unique identifier that I just zoomed in right here. You'll see that they have a UID. That's a number, usually starts with an S and then whatever level it is. You'll see a details button. You can click on that and bring up the information that you just saw. It says that it's a final level 1 self-assessment, the assessment date, and when it expires. So that is next year. It's a level 1, so it's only good for a year. But you'll see that, and you can click on those details. And then once this is in, eventually the DoD contracting officer can come in and see it as well. So that's level 1. For level 2, it's a little bit more work, but it's a little bit easier than downloading the checklist because you had to download the checklist for NIST. Actually, the checklist is online for CMMC, and so I'll walk you through that. So if you have to do a level 2 self-assessment, you're going to do this. You're going to click on the level 2, and you can see that it brings up the tab there. You'll see that you have an incomplete one, which means you are in the middle of running one of these checklists and it isn't done yet. You'll see the second one down there. That second line says pending affirmation. That means that it's waiting for you to affirm it. So there's an affirmation button. You can click on affirm, and you can go right to that affirmation screen. And then if you have to enter a new one, that's where we're going to go and enter your new one, add new CMMC level 2 self-assessment. Once again, if you don't see that button, that means you do not have edit privileges with the SPRS Cyber Vendor role. So that means that you're only having view only. So make sure that your CAM can approve you for your SPRS Cyber Vendor user role. So you're going to click on self-assessment there. You're going to enter a new one. And we're going to go to self-assessments for level 2. So this one is long. It's still got the same 110 steps that you have to say met or not met, or NA for certain ones, right? But it's all online for you here. So you're just going to step through them. At the very top, you'll see there's a progress tracker, so you can pick which family of questions are. They're based on certain parameters in the NIST SP 800 171 Rev 2. Right, that's the standard. It's all the same standard. And then you can see what the required objectives are. And on the right side, you can say met, not met, or NA. If you clicked on requirement objectives, it'll tell you what all those things mean. So that means you had to do all these 2 things on this one. And if they're both true, then you can say then they're met. It takes a little bit of time. Normally, most people know what the answers are to these right away. So it actually does go fairly quickly, especially your IT folks are going to know the answer. On 2 of the questions, you'll see that it's more than just met or not met. You have to actually open the objectives because there are numerous objectives. And then once you've done it, you'll be able to have your final answer. So for this particular one, you'll see that there's 4 things you have to either say met, not met, or NA. And if they're all met, then the overall thing will be met itself. Like I said, it's only for 2 of them, and it's real obvious. So now you've gone through all this, you've entered all your, you've filled out all the blocks, you've checked met or not met, or NA as appropriate, and now you're going to get down to where you're going to do the actual review of it and put the cages in that are involved. You're going to say what the assessing scope is. Like I said, the assessing scope for CMMC is only for enterprise or for enclave. Once again, just like in level 1, you're going to say how many employees you have in your organization. And then finally, you're going to select those cages. You're going to click on the cages, and you're going to select the cages that are subject, that are using the IT system for which the SSP was evaluated. And once again, if you go in there and you don't see all your cages, that means you need to update your hierarchy information in SAM. So you're going to save and continue. If you haven't completed them, they're going to be highlighted red at the top. It'll tell you which ones you have to have an answer for, because you have to have answers for every one of them. And then once you do this, then you're going to get a score. So you're going through all this and you're finally going to have a score. And your score here was 90. So you're going to get a conditional self-assessment. It's going to be conditional because it's less than 110. But you can still save this, you can still affirm it, and when the contracting officers come, they will still see this when the time comes. So it's going to report to you that right now it's unaffirmed, and it's a conditional self-assessment, and it's good for 180 days. And once again, if you're ready to continue the affirmation, you're going to do that. You're going to affirm it. And if you're the person that is affirming, right, otherwise it's going to send the email, does the email business that you saw before. But if you're the person affirming this, now you're going to see this. So level 2 assessments, this one is only good for 180 days because it's only temporary, because it's only conditional. But it'll be good for 3 years once you're done. So what you're going to do is you're going to do a reevaluation. You're going to do the future assessments, so you'll be able to see the future affirmations. You're going to see unique identifiers here, the pending affirmation, the company size, and then again, the statement saying if you're going to affirm it, make sure you understand you are subject to section 1001 of Title 18, and it's under the False Official Claims Act. So you're going to affirm it. But you'll see the boxes below. You can see where all the cages are, and you can see what the previous assessment results are. So you can always go here before you affirm. You can see all the information you really need to see. And you'll see down here, if you open up this box down here, the historical assessment, it'll tell you the date of the initial affirmation, but it'll also tell you when that second and third year affirmations are going to happen. And you'll notice it happens on the anniversary of the assessment, not when you affirmed it, but when you actually conducted the assessment, because it's good for 3 years after the assessment date. So you can just check this status anytime you want. Down at the bottom, you'll see view, extend, removed cages, because sometimes you might sell off a company or sell off a location, and that cage is no longer on this assessment. You can see what cages have moved. If you're a smaller company, it's not really much of a problem, but if you're like a RTX or a Northrop Grumman, it's a big deal. But you can always hit details when you see your big screen of all your assessments, and it'll bring up this menu right here, this window, and you can see the affirmation history and all the milestones attached. And that's level 1 and level 2. So those are the ones that the assessment, that the vendor, you as the vendor, can go in and do your self-assessments. Whole other process, obviously, for C3POs, but that's what we're going to address a little bit here too. So remember I said that the cage hierarchy is really, really important if you have more than one cage. I can't foot stomp this enough. And I'm going to say this now because it really applies as well to C3PIOs, and it's even a bigger problem. So it's really important that the company, not the C3PIO, but you, the company, goes in and makes sure that their SAM account is up to date and your hierarchy information is correct. So what does that mean? So imagine you had 5 different cages, just like this one here. You'll see cage 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Cage hierarchy data comes from SAM. The good folks at Cage, they have a IT connection, a data feed, a real-time data feed with SAM, and they will take all your information from SAM and update Cage, and it comes to us. That's where that is maintained. So when you need to fix it, you go to SAM. If you don't see if you're missing any of these cages, if you saw this picture and cage 4 was missing because the information is wrong, don't call me, my folks, I can't help you. You need to go into SAM, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So what's the deal with cages? So you're going to have a top cage, like the owner's cage, the headquarters cage, and that is called the highest level owner. The highest level owner, nobody owns that cage. That cage is all by itself. No one above it, right? There's no cage owning that cage. It is the highest level cage. Your company should only have one of these. So this is real easy. And every cage below it, every other cage in your company should, in their SAM record, say that the HLO, cage 1 is their HLO. So every record except for the HLO, every like cage 1, you'll notice cage 2, 3, 4, and 5, they have 2 entries there. They have something called the HLO, right, which we just said, that's the highest one. And then they're going to say who the immediate owner is, or the IO. These are fields that are in SAM, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So every cage has one HLO, and it's going to report that. You notice cage 2, 3, 4, and 5. They all say that cage 1 is their HLO. The IO is the cage that it reports to immediately. So for cage 2 and 3, their IO is also the HLO. That's the cage right above them. For cage 4 and 5, they both report to cage 3 directly because that's the cage above them. But all of them, every single one of them has HLO as cage 1 because that's the highest level cage. Each SAM entry should show your HLO and the ILO, and the IO, except the HLO. The HLO doesn't need to say that it's the it's HLO, it's all by itself. And again, with the red bumper sticker, don't forget, if this isn't right, it's going to be a problem. One of these cages won't show up. So how do you fix this? You go in, you're trying to enter your cages when you're doing your assessment, and you're missing a cage. That means that one of the chains in this hierarchy is broken. Normally it's one of the IOs, or it doesn't have the correct HLO or any HLO. So how do you fix this? Well, you go to SAM. And the vendor's going to go in and make sure the HLO and IO information
detailed
is correct.
Appreciate it, John.
So if you look on the left side here, that's what a SAM record looks like.
Watching,
and at the bottom of the page of a SAM record, it'll say these two things. Immediate owner,
following those steps.
IO, or the highest level owner, the HLO.
From our client.
And you're just going to make sure those things are correct. You can go in and enter those.
SPRS Score.
And you can say, my highest level owner is cage 1. Everybody in my company says their highest level owners are cage 1 because I only have one. And then the immediate owner is cage 3. When you've done that fix, that real-time data feed going to cage will send that over to cage .dla.mil, and then your hierarchy will be accurate in cage. They send their data to SPRS. We have a near real-time data feed with cage, and we get updates every hour. So if you update this in SAM, normally we say it takes 24 to 48 hours. I will tell you it's a lot faster than that. If you do it over coffee first thing in the morning by lunchtime, your hierarchy should be correct. And you can check it because you can come into SPRS either with the cyber vendor role or the regular contractor role, and you can look at your hierarchy. You can click on cage hierarchy, it'll bring it up, and you can verify that all your cages are in there. If you click on that, you don't see all your cages, then you need to go back and SAM and fix this. You need to make sure that you have one HLO, and then make sure that everybody's reports, every other cage says that cage 1 is the HLO, and they have the appropriate immediate owner listed. That's it. You can see there's 2 fields here. It's not that hard. You can only imagine what it's like for a Northrop Grumman. They have hundreds and hundreds of cages. They got people doing this. If you got 5 cages, it's a little bit easier. Just remember, as I said, if your hierarchy is wrong in SAM, it won't look right in SPRS. So that's how to fix it. So here's some cybersecurity assessment pointers, just a few things that we get from our help desk and from our calls, just trying to help you out. Why can't I find one of my cages? We just talked about it because either your HLO or IO data is not correct in SAM. Please go check it, right? Go fix that. Why don't I see the add new CMMC or NIST assessment button? Is because you don't have the SPRS cyber vendor user role. That's the one you don't have. So you need to go, you have one role, but you don't have that one. So you need to get, and you can have both roles, by the way, so it's not a problem. Here's the big one. Why is my SPRS cyber vendor role still listed as pending? I applied for it and I'm waiting. What is the deal? So your supervisor is the one that says, yes, you may have it, but your CAM in your company, your contractor administrator, is the person that turns it on. So basically you need to go over and find who your CAM is, and you can actually see that in PIEE. It'll tell you who your CAM is. If you're a small company, you know who this person is. This is the person largely is going to be your EVPOC for SAM. Just go over and say, hey, dude, go over there and please click on this so I can have this role. Thank you. If you are a CAM and you're the only CAM in your company, you're probably going to have to go to the help desk because the CAM's can approve everybody's roles except their own. So you can approve these roles all day long, but you can't do your own. So you'll have to go to the PIEE help desk. And then finally, can the SPRS help desk clarify CMMC assessment questions, or can it tell me how to run the NIST checklist? It can't. We are not the experts on this, right? We operate the IT system. We'll help you navigate that, but I can't tell you what each of those questions means. But there is a help desk link box in there, email box, and it shows up on the website quite a few times or in the app a few times. So please click on that if you have any actual technical questions about how to do it. So these are the roles. I show this to everybody at the top. You can see grayed out. This is what the government role has, but you're looking at the two roles for the contractors and vendors. So most folks have a SPRS contractor vendor role, the support role. This is the one where you can see your quality and delivery scores, your supplier risk scores, and you can view your hierarchy and you can view your NIST and CMMC results, but you can't enter them. If you want to enter them, if you want that button that you see on the right, this is where you need the SPRS cyber vendor user role. And that means allows you to edit them, add them, and you can also see the cage hierarchy. Remember, you can have both roles. It's going to be up to your company to decide if you should have both. And that's in PIEE. You see the link there. That's the URL for PIEE. And then the SPRS is what the tile looks like. When, if you haven't been in there, you'll see every time you have an additional program access there, you'll need WAF and you'll need SPRS so you can go in and see your scores. Our website has a crazy amount of help and I really encourage you to go to it. So you'll see on that button, it's got cyber reports, CMMC, and NIST. It's got NIST help. It has CMMC help as well. On the right side, you'll see there's a hamburger up on the right top. If you bring that down, we have a lot of references here. We have user guides on how to use SPRS. That's like the big telephone guide, shows everything. We have the quick reference guides, and the quick help guides are not quite like IKEA, but they're real simple. We have PIEE access help if you're trying to get help to get your role set up in PIEE. We'll kind of show you
John,
what that
can you
looks
hear
like.
me now?
If you're interested in how your quality and delivery scores are scored,
So
we have
I
the
had a
evaluation
client
criteria.
where
The real good one below that is the
this was a
facts
contracting
and with training.
officer where they
So
were
in training, we
initially
have
going
a
to
bunch
be
of
awarded a
PowerPoint
contract,
presentations
but when the
you can look
contracting
at
officer went
from
into
the
SPRS
simplest
to see
thing
if they
to
had
just how do I enter
171
my
self-assessment
CMMC
on
results?
file, they
How do I
didn't.
enter? How do
And
I
for that
do the
reason, they were not
affirmation?
awarded that
And we have
contract. Have you
tutorial
heard of
videos, little YouTube
stories like
type
that?
videos that'll walk you through step by step, especially for the AOs. Like I said, most of the people who are in SPRS are working on their scores, are actually entering the assessments. The AOs are largely not SPRS users, so we want to make it really simple for them so they know what to do, the few steps it takes to do their initial and annual affirmations. So please go to that. The website's got a lot of information on it, and the videos are awesome. Here's some contact information. This is our SPRS website that I just showed you right there. We have a great help desk. If you send them an email, they will respond to you quite quickly. And then we have a feedback system. It's newly improved. It's just amped up a little bit more. It's even better than the help desk. You go to that. It's at the bottom of the application menu, and it gives you more like a chat, not quite a chat, but it's more of a thread of responses that we have if you have any questions. And that's all I have, folks, today. Are there any questions?
And John, will you be sharing these slides? So I'll share these slides, and yeah, it is recorded for everyone. But on that note also, John, I recently had a client where they were submitting an RFP that explicitly required them to be eligible to submit that RFP for a DoD contract, well, DoD RFP, that they had to have a CMMC level 1 self-assessment submitted. I'm not sure if you heard about that.
Thanks, John. This is CBL Rao from Codister. I have one question. So this through SPRS
so for this RFP,
level 2 also is a self-assessment, or somebody else has to come and certify that the score?
So the level 2 self-assessment, you can just run the checklist yourself. The C3PAO is where you get the other, where you get someone, you pay someone else to run the checklist for you.
John just delivered because,
and what I will say, and I don't know if I get the impression that you do have some C3PAOs here.
They're 871 self-assessment on file, or most recently,
when I talked to the PMO, the
CMMC
CMMC Program Manager office, after the C3PAO is done doing the assessment, they are going to use a spreadsheet to send your results to something called EMAS, which is the computer system that collects these up and stores the results. And then they send them to us, and that's how you can see them, and that's how you can affirm them. It's really, really important that that your C3PAO has the correct cages as you report them. So it's really important. Like when you do a self-assessment, I'm going to tell you which cages you can see. You can click on them. I don't see this cage. Well, I can go to Sam. You're going to tell your C3PAO whatever cages you want. When it comes to SPRS, If they typed it wrong, or you told it to them wrong, or it's somehow those cages aren't correctly listed with their HLOs and IOs in SAM, when they come to me, they won't show up. So it's really important for vendors who are hiring C3PAOs, and it's really important for the C3PAOs to make sure that their customers, the DIB vendors, they have a good relationship with
Mike,
them.
to your question,
These
I'm not sure if it was Army, but I know it was
These
DOD.
are all the cases, because there's no validation that happens at EMAS. It happens at the SPRS end. So
to John's point,
I would put this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to make any recommendations. If I had to go out and do this, I would make sure that my C3PAO was on the hook to enter, do the assessment, and do everything between the assessment and a successful affirmation of all my cages. Does that help?
Yeah. That makes sense.
That's an important distinction. Level to CMMC level 1 and level 2, those self-assessments.
I'll also add one more thing when it comes to affirming. So if you have a this is true for
requirement for DoD is that DFAR
level 2 self-assessments and level 2 C3PAOs.
Self-assessment.
Once you affirm it, you cannot add cages. So you can't come back later and say, oh, this other cage is also using this assessment, this system. You can't add cages afterwards. So when you do the affirmation, make sure that every cage you expect to be on there is on there.
Yeah, so Ed, to your point, could the vendor contest? Possibly, but in this scenario, they wouldn't have been able to submit that RFP.
It's a quiet group.
Without evidence. They already had a CMMC level 1 self-assessment. Well, that's something they could have could contest. They were asking for the evidence. Yeah. That's not all the details I receive, but
okay. So is SPRS the only path to report SPRS? Is this the only path to report SPRS scores? If I want to provide my client with a third-party application that follows along the NIST reporting procedures, is that possible? I'm going to confess I don't understand what you're asking.
So
the C3PAOs are obviously certified to enter the results into EMAS and to perform the assessment.
It's the same.
They have some
coming from the same requirements, but CMMC has additional requirements.
So they can do their self-assessments, right? They can do those themselves. But if
it's a one-for-one mapping.
Yeah, the only two ways you can get SPRS results in here is through C3PAO, or if they're doing self-assessment.
DFARS like 70, 19,
or
20.
if DIBCAC is doing it. And they're not doing those just yet.
Another thing that John pointed out with the
bless you, thanks.
Self-assessment that you mentioned, John, is annually for CMMC, right? Versus 171 assessment.
We work really hard to make sure that it's as simple as possible. I know if you get on LinkedIn and it seems like it's overwhelming, the C3PAOs are probably going to make it fairly simple for you. Just want to get you through the part, especially with the cages, where it can be the hardest. And the reason I say that is when you go for a contract, contracting officer is awarding a contract to a cage. So you want to make sure the cage shows up in your assessment in SPRS. I can hear you.
As far as, and when I say the one-to-one mapping, if you're looking at the CMMC assessment guide and this 800-171, the requirements are the same, but there are some different naming conventions.
It is. I'm gonna also put another. This is something I'm guessing you've happened since CMMC came out. The only thing that the government people can see. I'm going to go back here for a second.
Now, in terms of contracting your office, John, what would be the use cases for contractors?
So as you're doing the assessment, you'll see at the top, it tells you what the assessment standard is. That does not make this a NIST assessment. That tells you what the standard of the CMMC assessment is. I know it's a lot of government speak. Here's the point. You have to have
so what reason should they contact you? I know
right now
the cage code that's going to be
in NIST, because that's the only place that CMMC, that the contracting officers can look at. This is the only thing that they can see is NIST assessments. The CMMC assessments do not count as NIST assessments. Shirley, I'm going to send you another PDF.
Cool. I guess we'll wait. Like he's typing, Mike, taking up with one question. So we'll get that last question before we let you go, Don. Definitely appreciate your time today.
I have not, and that would be up to the contracting officials to decide whether that's important to them or not.
While Mike types up his last question, anyone has a question?
And I can see that. I don't know if there's a requirement for that. They're probably doing it knowing that within the next few months that 48 CFR is going to be out and they're going to expect it. But that's up to them to make that requirement for an RFP.
Just kind of making a statement. Yeah. Fun times in compliance land. Well, all right. Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. And y'all be on the lookout for those presentations. I'll share that out. And then also y'all be sharing the recording. It'll be on CP.
I'm not a contracting officer, but I do know for a fact that there is no OSD guidance that I've seen right now. And I talked to the OSD contract policy folks that even tells what a contracting officer, what they need to look at as far as CMMC. I'll give you this right now. I don't mind telling you this, that right now on this day, and for at least for the next 30 days, DoD contracting officers can't come into SPRS and see your CMMC results. All they can see is your NIST results. And the reason I know that is because we haven't written it yet. So we are developing right now the capability to see it. But the contracting officers have not been given the guidance as to how to use the CMMC data, and right now they can't even see it. So if they're asking for CMMC level 1, they're going directly to the vendor and asking for some kind of discussion about that. I'm sure they had to send a screenshot or something like that, which, that's kind of bougie on itself, but I don't get in the way of that. There was some confusion because people are like, well, it says in the check on the screen that it's Rev 2. So if I do CMMC, it must meet my NIST requirement. It does not. Correct. Just 19 and 20 right now. And again, they're asking for the evidence because they can't see it themselves. Definitely not. Copy that. Yes, correct. For CMMC, it's an annual affirmation. And you'll see that go over here, you'll see some of the rows appear red is because they've either expired or because the affirmation is expired. So if you're still within the 3 years and your affirmation is just expired, you can go, when you go back in and affirm it, it won't be red after you affirm it. But after 3 years, it does expire. Yes, correct. Once CMMC self-assessment C3PAO assessment stands up, will override NIST. That's going to be up to the DFARS and your contracting officer. They're going to tell you what their requirements are. Eventually, NIST is going to sunset. I don't have a date for that. Yeah, I gave that email address and that for the help desk in there. And if I don't mind, you can give my email address to at least to the Apex folks if they got questions. Now, if you got a question about how to operate the system, that's really what I can help you with. If you're asking, do I need to do this to get a contract? I won't be able to tell you. I'm not a contracting officer and I'm not a policy guy. You're correct, not yet. I expect that you're going to see other GSA requiring CMMC at some point in the future. I know they've come to us and asked if they can start viewing our assessments at some point in the future. Of course, nobody in the government can right now, but that infrastructure is going to come along to someone. It'll probably show up in SAM, honestly. Terrific. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, John.